Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Wheel of Time rewatch with me, James, the host with the best fedora doing this. um, Today, we're going to be talking about episode 8, The Eye of the World. Hey, that's also the title of the first book of the series. This was also directed by Ciaran Donnelly, who also directed episode 7. Talked a little bit more about that in that video, so why don't you go have a watch if you haven't seen it already. Today, before we get started, I just want to say thank you so much for being here with me as I go through and do this. It's been quite an experience, and I've been having I tried my best to learn a different technique or a different skill with video editing. I hope that you can actually see a better quality video here than there was on episode 1. If you did, why don't you leave a comment below and let me know. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, this is episode 8, the final season, or the final episode of season 1. It's called The Eye of the World, same title as the book. So we open up with the cold open with this episode. It takes place 3,000 years ago, and there are two people sitting down having a discussion, and they are speaking a language that we've never heard. In this discussion, you find out that one of them wants to go do something. During this discussion, you find out that one of them wants to go do something and the other one just refuses to do it. And as the discussion goes on, you find out that the man is planning an attack of some kind, and the woman doesn't want to be involved at all. She thinks something really dark and really terrible is going to come from it. But the man insists. And you find out that the man is Luz Theron Telamon, and he's called the Dragon Reborn. It should just be the dragon, but they call him the Dragon Reborn in the subtitles. The lady is Latropose Dekame. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. But she is the Tamerlane seat. This whole discussion between them takes place before the world got broken. From this discussion, what we take away from this discussion is that whatever they were planning, whatever happened, is the reason now why Aes Sedai are all women and men who can channel are shunned and hunted down and killed wherever they're found. Whatever happened is responsible for the madness that men experience as they touch the source and as they channel. And with that, we go to the opening credits. This episode skips between characters quite a bit. It's a very fast-paced episode. There's a lot that's going on. And I'll let you know, but there is going to come a point in time where I'm just going to follow one character or one set of characters until they finish the story. Then I'll go to the next set. Then I'll go to the next set. Right now, though, we're going to open up the story proper with Rand and Moiraine in the Blight. They're walking through the Blight. It's dreary. It's damp. It's dark. There's dead bodies everywhere, and Moiraine explains to Rand that the blight is a rot on the land stemming from the Dark One's prison. From there, we go back to Fal Dara. Perrin and Egwene are having a discussion / argument. Egwene wants to leave, wants to go find Rand and Moiraine, doesn't want them to do this alone. Perrin points out, rightly so, that they're in the Blight. They don't know where to go. Only Moiraine does. Not even Lan knew exactly where to go. So even if they left, how would they catch up? How would they get to them? Nobody knows. Back in the Blight, Moiraine and Rand, as they're walking along, they actually see the 7 towers of Malkier, so that Moiraine knows that they're on the right track, and they're going to keep heading in that direction. Rand does make a comment that it looks like the towers have been standing there and covered and unused for 1,000 years. And Moraine's just like, no, it's been 40 at most. Kind of gives you the idea of how long it's been or how destructive the Blight is on everything around it. We go back to Fal Dara, and this time it's Lan and Nynaeve. And Lan is acknowledging to Nynaeve that Moiraine masked the bond, and he doesn't have a way that he can sense her. He doesn't have a way he can really track her or anything like that. Nynaeve tells Lan that when she caught up to them, she wasn't really tracking him. She was tracking her. She offers to tell Lan how to track Moiraine. But she does make Lan promise to bring Rand back. And then Lan goes and declares his love for her. All right. After that scene with Lan and Nynaeve, we switch back to Rand and Moraine, and Rand is asleep, and he wakes up, and Moraine is there, and she says, "What's going on?" And he says, "The Dark One's coming. We got to get out of here." And then a sword just bursts through Moraine's open mouth, and as the sword is pulled out and she falls away, we see the man with ember eyes standing there. And Rand immediately grabs his bow, takes a shot, and shoots him in the eye. And in probably the greatest mask reveal of all time, the man with the ember eyes just kind of takes the arrow into his eye and taking the mask in there with it. And when he's done, he's just like, that's better. Now we can have a normal conversation. And then he starts talking to Rand, and he calls Rand Lews Therin and says, "Listen, the last time that we fought, you came with 99 companions, and they were all much stronger than this one. What do you think you're going to do with just one companion this time? Do you even have a plan?" And he just keeps trying to knock Rand down. As he continues to talk, Rand is like, "This is a dream, this is a dream," and eventually like grabs his sword and stabs himself in the gut, and then wakes up. As he wakes up, Moraine asks him, "What is it?" And he's like, "I had a dream." And she says, "Can you tell me about the dream? Was anybody there?" Dreams have a lot of power, especially here, this close to the Dark One's prison. And Rand doesn't really answer her in any meaningful way. He just tells her, "I didn't believe a word that he says." Rand looks at Moraine and is like, "So what's the plan when we get there? How am I going to defeat him?" And she's just like, "Well, listen, I have this Sa Angreal, and you're going to use it." And she explains that a Sa Angreal is something that when you use the power, it's going to amplify the amount of power that you wield. And Rand's like, "So that's it? That's the plan?" And Moraine's like, "Yeah, man, I spent 20 years looking for you. I didn't know that I would need to think beyond that." Or something. I don't know. So, but Rand's really skeptical of the plan and looks at Moraine and says, "You thought it was Egwene, didn't you? You thought that was why you were trying to teach her how to channel, because you thought it was going to be her." It's like, "Well, yeah, I thought it was going to be her too." We go back to Fal Dara, and Egwene and Nynaeve are standing on a balcony in the keep, and Nynaeve is trying to hear the wind and tells Egwene that she can't, and asks Egwene, "What do you hear when you listen to the wind?" And Egwene says, "I hear the same thing I heard on Winter Night, but if that was a whisper, this is a shout." And the scene cuts to where you see basically a vantage point from the Blight looking in at Fal Dara through the gap, and there's just Trollocs heading towards the gap. They're rallying there to attack. We come back to Rand and Moraine is telling him that when the times come, he will channel whether he wants to or not, and she knows this. And he's like, "How do you?" So she tells a story about when she was a novice in the tower, she didn't really have the greatest grasp on being able to channel until one woman came and kept beating her and beating her and beating her and beating her until she used the channel to protect herself and stop the woman from beating her any further. Yeah, it seems kind of brutal to me. Back in Fal Dara, everyone gathers together and they go to see Min because they know that Min sees things. And Min is just telling them, like, "Listen, nobody really wants to know these things. I don't know if they're coming back. It doesn't really work that way. I see what I see. Sometimes I know, sometimes I don't. But, if I don't see it, I don't know. I don't know how things turn out." And then as she's looking around to all the other people in the tavern, she starts seeing people with blood all over their face, people dying, seeing visions of all these people dying and stuff. So she knows that something's coming soon. We go back to the Blight, and Rand and Moraine, still making their way towards the Eye, they see the Trolloc army massing in order to invade the Gap and invade Fal Dara, and we see that it's much larger than it was a little bit earlier. There's a brief scene in Fal Dara where Lord Agomar is being briefed on the Trollocs massing outside of the Gap, getting ready to attack it. he's making plans to take his soldiers to the Gap to fight off the Trollocs and buy everybody time. Then it switches to back to the Blight with Rand and Moiraine, and we see that they come across a giant hole in the ground. And Moiraine says, "We've arrived. We're here at the Eye." And as they start walking down, Rand's like, you told everybody that whoever's not the dragon is gonna die. Does that include you? And Moiraine just keeps walking down. And he's like, "No, why don't you stay here?" And she just keeps walking down. And then we see Lan, and Lan is at the spot that Moiraine and Rand were at earlier, where they could see the towers of Malkier. And then he just presses on and continues on. Back in Fal Dara, Lady Amalisa is helping Lord Algamar put on his armor, getting ready for battle. And she is trying to talk to him and advise him, and he just turns to her and says, "Look, you were right. We should have requested help from the Aes Sedai a long time ago, but we didn't, and this is where we're at now." And he tells her, he's like, "I know that, we aren't going to survive, but we have to buy time to get everybody out of the city. We got to send messengers to all the cities and everything around so that they know what's coming. Our goal is not to survive, but to buy enough time to let the messengers get away and do what they need to do, and to let the civilians get as far away as possible." It switches back to Rand and Moiraine, and they are descending into the Eye. And they're looking around and they're walking around, and Rand's like, "What is this place?" And Moiraine says, I don't really know. All of the records about this place were punged from Tower Records by Dark Friends. As they walk into the bottom, they walk into this open room at the bottom of the pit, and there's a big circular symbol on the bottom of the floor, and it's the symbol of the ancient symbol of the Aes Sedai, which is, we would recognize it as the yin yang symbol in our society. So Rand approaches the symbol, and as he steps on the symbol, he starts remembering things, and he starts telling Moiraine about what he sees. He says, I was here once. I fought the Dark One here, but it wasn't. It was the Dark One, but it was a man, and we see that it's the guy that he spoke with earlier. And after that, he reaches down a little bit and touches the symbol, and then Rand is in a house, touching the ground, and he stands up. He looks around, and he's in a quaint little college. He looks around. He sees a little crib for a baby. He goes outside, and Egwene is there with a little girl. He's very confused and doesn't know what's going on. And Egwene approaches him and says, "Hey, why don't you hold on to our daughter?" And hands him to her, and then walks into the house for a little bit. Now, one thing to note is that the lighting did a sudden shift here, and that's going to be important because that light is going to let you know which part is the dream and which part is the real world. So right after Egwene walks away, and Rand is just there smiling with holding his daughter, and we switch back to the real world, and Moiraine is there cradling Rand's body, and you hear a voice saying, "What did you think would happen?" And it's the Dark One. It's the guy that Rand's been seeing. Moiraine wastes no time, starts trying to channel to attack the guy, and it fails. It's like we see daggers approaching him, and it just stops. And then he does something, and we see him channel, and then Moiraine no longer can, and it stops. And he stands above her, taunting her. He says, "I wonder what it must be like to knowing that the source is there, but you just can't touch it." And then we switch back to Fal Dara, and Lord Algamar is preparing to lead troops over to Tarwin's Gap, to the keep in the Gap to hold. Lady Amalisa is giving orders about the city on how to protect it, evacuating the civilians, and preparing the city itself, and also requests that any woman that can channel be brought to her so that they can try and mount a defense together. Because remember, she was trained at the tower, but she just wasn't strong enough to become a full sister. And we also see a very short shot of all the civilians and everybody leaving Fal Dara, and Min is on the back of a wagon. She's one of them that's leaving. There's a quick scene of 4 soldiers approaching the throne and moving the throne off, and they are going to start digging something up there. And there's a quick cut to Perrin, Egwene, and Nynaeve and Loyal, and they're trying to figure out what to do. And Loyal mentions that there's been a request for all people, all women that can channel, to meet Lady Amalisa. And then it switches over to the keep at the Gap, and the battle is beginning. Trollocs are swarming towards the defensive structure there, and the men are just shooting arrow after arrow, crossbow after crossbow. Like, they're doing everything they can to take them down. Nynaeve and Egwene meet Lady Amalisa and two other unnamed individuals outside, in between the defensive structure at the Gap and Fall Dara. Perrin and Loyal are trying to discuss what to do. Perrin is very frustrated that he feels like he's not doing anything and he can't do anything to help. Loyal is very calm about it. He's like, listen, I found that if you're in a situation where you don't know what to do, just ask. So off they go to ask somebody. Then we switch back to Rand, and in Rand's dream, he's standing there with Egwene, and Egwene approaches, and Rand kind of pulls away from her. He knows something's not right. So he starts questioning her and asks her questions that only Egwene would know, and tells a little story about them getting lost in the woods and, going to sleep one night under a tree, but they carved something into the tree. Egwene was able to tell him what was carved, and Rand immediately says, oh, this is real. This is all real. So time freezes, and the Dark One approaches Rand and says, it's not real, but it could be. You have the power to make it real. I just need to show you how. And in the real world, the Dark One is walking around Moraine, and he says, well, I wonder which one he'll choose. From this point here, I'm going to do 3 separate timelines, basically. So all of these things are happening at the same time in the episode. They're just being cut, intermixed, and it's going back and forth really quick. So instead of trying to follow it like that, like you've seen how jumpy it's been with me just talking about it, it gets 10 times worse from here on out. So I'm just going to follow one, then another, then another. And we're going to start with Perrin. Okay, Perrin and Loyal. Perrin and Loyal approach the soldiers that are digging up at the throne floor, and they ask what they can do to help. And one of the guys just picks up a pickaxe and hands it to them. So they proceed to take the pickaxe to the stone floor and start digging things up. They eventually uncover something, and Perrin asks what it is, and one of the soldiers says it's the Horn of Valir. It's something that whenever it's blown, it'll bring heroes back from the dead to help fight for everybody. And Perrin's like, all right, let's do it. And the soldier says, no, it's not for us. The dragon's going to use it at the last battle. But they continue to bring it up. He's like, we got to get it to the dragon. Outside, it's, this took a while. Outside, it's turning night. It's getting dark. It's turning night. And we see Padan Fain knocks on the door to the keep, and he says a passphrase. Door gets opened up by 2 female guards. And they're just like, how do you know that phrase? And Padan Fain is there with 2 other people in dark hoods, and they're Murdrell, and they just kill the 2 guards. And then Padan Fain just wanders into the keep. Now, at this point, I do want to point out that the phrase that was said, Kingfisher flashes above the pond. And the reason why I want to point this out is when Robert Jordan describes combat in The Wheel of Time, this is the kind of phrase that he uses to describe whatever maneuver someone is doing. And this one might actually be in the book. But I thought it was really cool that they used that as a phrase. It was kind of a cool Easter egg. Anyways, inside the keep, Perrin and Loyal and the guards, they finish opening up everything. But at one point, Perrin looks around and he sees Fain. And he's like, hey, wait a minute, you are alive. And starts going off after him and starts looking around the keep to try and find him. And as he's looking around, goes down hallways, goes down corridors, he can't find Fain. But at one point, he gets startled by a bat that's inside the keep for some reason. And then he hears sounds of fighting, and he runs back, and he sees Padan Fain stabbing Loyal, and all of the other guards are laying down. They're all hurt and injured. He's stabbing Loyal, he stops. Yeah, so not only is he stabbing Loyal, but he's doing it with the ruby-hilted dagger that Matt took out of Shadar Logoth. And he stops and he goes over and picks up the box containing the Horn of Valir. And he starts talking to Perrin, and he says, why do you think I came to the 2 rivers every bell time? Like, he refers to the Two Rivers as an S-hole, like it's backwards, like he would never have gone there in a million years unless it was, but it wasn't his choice and stuff like that. He's like, I was looking for you guys. There was 5 Taverin in the Two Rivers, and somebody finally explains that Taverin are focal points for the wheel. He mentions that normally you might have 1, maybe 2 in a generation, but here we are with 5 in one single location. The Dark One wanted them because statistically, 1 or 2 is going to go over to the dark. Is going to go over to the shadow, to the dark side. Perrin is, throughout this whole exchange, Perrin is getting more and more angry, and he mentions that, Thane mentions that Rand might be the Dragon Reborn, but all of them are going to have a part to play, and some of them are probably going to turn to the shadow. And Perrin immediately at one point grabs an axe, and Thane says, "See, the tiniest push, and you head towards the darkness." Him and the 2 Myrddraal just leave with the Horn of the Lear as Perrin is standing there holding the axe. Now we're going to go back, and we're going to talk about Egwene and Nynaeve. So Egwene, Nynaeve, Lady Amalisa, the other 2, they're standing in between Fal Dara and the Gap. They know that the Trolloc army is coming. The fortress, the defensive structure there in the Gap being overrun. Lord Agomar gets stabbed in the chest with a spear. It doesn't really look like it goes in very far because of the armor, but he is hurt nonetheless. And then the Trollocs break through. And Lady Amalisa tells everybody to open themselves up to the source, and she starts linking through them. So they link together. Amalisa's in control. And as the Trolloc army breaks through and they get closer and closer and closer, Lady Amalisa starts calling lightning and unleashes the power on all of the Trollocs and just kills them all. But the power is too much for her. She can't let it go. It's just coming through her. She's pulling more and more and more of it. Egwene and Nynaeve tell her to stop. The other ladies tell her to stop, and she can't. She just keeps pulling. She winds up burning out the other 2, which is basically she drew so much power through them, they wound up dying. At least that's what it looks like. Their eyes turn black, like they get burned out. There's burn marks all over their face. They fall to the ground and they don't move anymore. Because Egwene and Nynaeve are so much more powerful than they are, they're holding on a little bit more. But Lady Amalisa is, at this point, it's like an addiction. Like, she cannot let go. Like, she grabbed the boa constrictor. There's no way that she's able to let it go without getting hurt. She grabbed the bull by the horns, is what I'm trying to say. Nynaeve crawls over to Egwene and starts talking to her about being a woman from the 2 rivers and how a woman's never alone and that the women's circle's always there and that everybody's there to protect her and that women protect each other. I don't know exactly what Nynaeve does, but she winds up getting burned out. Lady Amalisa winds up pulling so much of the power it kills her. And it looks like the same thing happens to Nynaeve, where her eyes are all burnt out, her face is burned and scarred. And Egwene is, after it's all done, Egwene is there alone, holding Nynaeve and crying. And we see her start to channel, and Nynaeve gets healed and wakes up. And at this point, we go back, and now we're dealing with just Rand in the dream. Rand starts to say, like, the world feels stale. Like, it's not, this doesn't feel right. And the Dark One says, it can be. The only thing that's lacking is your conviction, like your desire to make it so. And Rand asks, how do I do that? And the Dark One, he kind of smiles and he says, I'll show you. And it cuts to Moraine, and Moraine says, oh, he's learning how to channel, but will it be to strengthen my chains or weaken them? Who knows? Moraine pulls out a dagger and puts it to Rand's throat, and she's just like, if he doesn't choose the light, he's not making that choice. I'm gonna end him. We're just gonna deal with that now. It switches back to Rand, and he's learning, like the Dark One is telling him explaining to him how to channel, how to feel the source, how to channel, and stuff like that. And while that's going on, Rand reaches into his pocket and pulls out the sa'angreal. And Dark One's kind of like, what are you doing with that? And Rand's like, listen, this world, yeah, she might be loving. She might, I might have a daughter. She might be loving, but the Egwene that I know, no, she wanted to be a wisdom. She wanted to go to the tower. She didn't want to settle down and have a family. This isn't real. And then he pulls the thing out. He pulls the Sangreal out, holds it in his hand, and just blasts the Dark One with energy. And during that whole scene, like he's both in the dream and in the real world. He's standing up facing the Dark One, holding the Sangreal when he blasts him and gets rid of him. And after that's done, he turns around, he looks at Moraine, and he's like, "It's done. I killed him." Moraine says, "We can't go back to Faldara. We got to go somewhere else." And Rand's just like, "Listen, I can't go back." He's like, "I'm a man who can channel. That means I'm going to go mad, right?" Like, "You're nice that men who channel go mad." Yeah. I don't want to do that to my friends. I don't want to be the one to go mad and kill all my friends and family. So I don't want to go back. So he says, "Do me a favor. Tell them I died. That's the least that you can do for me." And she points out that she can't lie. And he's like, "Yeah, but you can do other things. You can make it work." And then he just takes off. She asks where he's going to go. He doesn't give an answer. He just kind of turns around, acknowledges like a final goodbye with a nod, and then just takes off. And a little later, we see Moraine sitting down, holding this white crystallized rock. And Lan shows up. He finally makes it there and says, "I can't feel you. Can you unmask the bond?" And Moraine says, I can't feel the source." And Lan sees the rock in her hand and says, "What's that?" And he's like, "That's Quindiar." And he says, "I thought that it couldn't be broken. Like, not even the one power could break it, only strengthen it." And Moraine says, "Yeah, I thought so too. I think this was part of the seal of the Dark One's prison. I don't think that this was the last battle at all. I fear that this is the first." And then we cut to the final end of the episode. And this is on the far western shore. And it's a huge beach. And there's only a little girl on this beach playing and looking for seashells. And she looks out in the ocean and she sees a whole bunch of ships on the horizon. We cut to the ships and these women with golden muzzles appear on the deck of the ship, and some other women that have lots of face paint around their mouths and very unique looking fashion. They give some commands, and the ladies with the gold muzzles, they start channeling, and they channel a gigantic tsunami to go towards the beach. And the final shot is of the tsunami approaching this little girl on this beach. And no one has been able to explain to me why such a large tsunami was needed for a little girl. What did that little girl do? But anyways, that's how it ends. But moving forward from here, I plan to do the same thing with season 2. Talk about season 2 as it airs as well, because it's the real time and I'm excited. And if you're watching this, I hope you're excited too. If you're excited, leave a like, subscribe, join me for more. And in the meantime, have a good day. Thank you everyone who buys loud toys for children. Yeah, that's so nice of you. Woo.